All right, so Busi, it's a great pleasure to have you here and you making the time to grace us with your moments and just getting to share some of your experience in the tech industry. We have quite a number of people who are just curious. Other people are not really at the peak of their careers. They are making the decision as to whether they should get into tech. There are also people who actually feel, oh, tech is too complicated, doesn't feel like the best decision for me, especially ladies. So if you could come in as this person who would be able to help shape that path, giving us your past experiences and just helping us understand what things could actually be used or be integrated in coming up with a better career in the tech industry. I'm going to just pick up on a few highlights. And one of the things that really caught my attention when I was looking at your profile was that you worked for Cisco. Everybody dreams of working at Cisco. Tell us about your story. You've just left University of Pretoria in 2016. You're stepping into Cisco. I'm wondering, was it meat? What was it? Wood meat? Was it Sentin already? And how was it like going to Cisco?
Thank you so much for having me, and hi everyone. I'm looking forward to having this be like an interactive session. So if you do have any questions that come up, feel free to type them in chat. I have it open on my side as well. But yes, my name is Busi. I was born in South Africa, and I grew up and went to the University of Pretoria, as John mentioned. And when I was doing my honors, so I went on to do honors. When I was studying, I studied information science. That's when I first got my intro into the Cisco world. But before getting to the University of Pretoria, I was quite confused, honestly, like when I was going through school as to what exactly I should go and study. Because when I looked at my interests, there were so many things that I could have potentially gone on to study. But one of my brothers, I have four older brothers, and one of them said, maybe look at the tech side of things. Like, you could be interested in it, just check it out. And if it's something you think maybe you might like, because he also noticed how I had taken an interest to just trying out different things on the computer we had at home. And he went to college and studied something in IT as well, computer related courses. And I was just very interested in the field from that side of things. So I thought, okay, I'm confused and I trust my older brother. And that for me is how I ended up going into the tech department and looking at things at the University of Pretoria that I could potentially study, and how I ended up in tech. So when I studied, I ended up doing my honors, and there was a program which was at the Innovation Hub in Pretoria, which was called Coach Lab. I'm not 100% sure if they still run it, but when that program was open for applications, I put in my application, and the company that ended up sponsoring me to go through that program was Cisco. So when you were going through the interviews for that program, you were interviewed by a number of different companies. Like, they were, the APUs was part of the program, PwC was part of the program, Cisco was part of the program, and they had people who also came from TUT who were part of that program. So it was people from different institutions, and the idea of it was to expose us to skills that are going to help us as we go into the industry, because they took a lot of people who were working in more of the tech side of things, not working, studying in the tech side of things. So that's how I initially got my exposure into the Cisco world. And I had a couple of mentors through the program who were from Cisco, people who worked at Cisco. And through one of the mentors, when the program opened up at Cisco, they have a Cisco Sales Associate program. It's called CSAP. You can have a look at it. They still run it each and every year. He told us about it, and that's when I put in my application. I went through that process. And for that initial year when I worked for Cisco, which was after my honors year, I was actually based in Amsterdam in the Netherlands, because that's where they have it's one of the training hubs. So if you would be joining through that program as a graduate, you are going to be based in one of their training hubs. So you could end up maybe in Poland, and you could be maybe in the US. It just depends on the region that you are in and the field that you end up ending up
so you're saying
in Cisco.
This CSAP program, to be honest, I'm hearing it for the first time. It only gets graduates and tries to integrate them into the Cisco ecosystem. Is that right?
That is correct. So if you are going to be in the sales space, whether you're technical pre-sales or maybe you're going to be in an account manager, because when you're coming into tech, you don't necessarily have to be a technical person. There can be roles where you are a non-technical person, but you still work in tech. And I've had the pleasure of working in both. I started out being in a very technical role, and then I
Yes.
transitioned to a role that was not as technical, which we'll talk about as we go.
Well, I'm just curious. A lot of people don't love those tickets, especially on Friday. And people are always asking, okay, what's in the sales world? And I've noticed that you've been in this customer success manager space, and I understand there isn't much of technical work in there, but as much as we may want to go there, most of us are not really even clued up. We don't even know what being a success manager is like. Is it even something that is lucrative? There are two I think, balls that people try to juggle. And this is usually how lucrative a role is and how much free time do I get? And it's always,
Yeah.
it's like an oxymoron in a way that you can't get, a very highly lucrative role and at the same time have very little, time to spend in one area, unless you really know your way through certain areas. Can you just maybe transition into that space of you being the success manager and what it's like to be a success manager?
So I think let me give a bit of a backstory as to how I ended up in the customer success side of things.
Yes.
So I worked in pre-sales as a systems engineer at Cisco. And during that process, I started out as an associate when I was still a fresh graduate, and then became a virtual systems engineer, which meant that I wasn't seeing customers necessarily face to face. So I was working from my laptop. I could work from home really, but I went to the office a lot because I was still new in Johannesburg when I went back to South Africa. And I would work with customers who were all over the EMEA region. So I was not just focused on customers in South Africa, and I specialized in collaboration for that year. So I only worked on Cisco collaboration products in that year. And then after that year, I transitioned to a field role, which meant now I was working with customers who are in the sub-Saharan region. I'm going to see customers face to face. And that's where my specialization was more general, just because of the nature and type of customers that I was supporting. Right. And during that whole process, because you're speaking to customers, trying to understand what their goals are and see which kind of technology would fit what they're trying to achieve, I started noticing that there were customers who had purchased licenses from us from a collaboration perspective. For example, yes, they'll purchase phone licenses because they needed those licenses to use these phones. And that was their need at the time. But the features that came with some of the licenses some of these customers had, they also had other features that they were made aware of in the sales process. But then they thought, oh, okay, yeah, like when we need that, it's good that we have it, but we don't need it now. But a lot of them tend to forget that they have those licenses. So there was one instance that I very clearly remember and always reference, because this customer was talking to us and they were trying to bring in instant messaging and presence into their organization. Yes. So they're just asking, how do we go about doing that with Cisco? Do you have a product? Because we've been looking at other competitors. So yes, how would that work? And when I looked at the licenses that this customer had, they already had it. They had purchased it, but at the time they purchased it, they initially were using the licenses purely for their phones, like the physical phones that they had. And they didn't know that we have this soft client that we can use as an instant messaging product. And so that led me to ask, how do we ensure that after our customers have actually purchased, they know what they have purchased and they are using every single feature, so we don't end up losing them to a competitor when they have a solution that maybe they might already have a license for, but they just are not aware of that. And that's when I heard about customer success managers. At that time in South Africa, there was only one customer success manager, and she was based in Cape Town. I was based in the Johannesburg office. Cisco had a Johannesburg and Cape Town office.
Okay.
Yeah. And then at the time, the lady was on maternity leave. So I wanted to just have a conversation with her to understand what exactly do you do in your role. But she wasn't around, right? Because she was on maternity. So what I ended up doing was I searched on the internal directory, and looked up customer success managers within Cisco. And this is something I would highly recommend that you all do if you have a field that you are interested in, but you're not really quite sure what people who do that job do. You don't have to be in an organization where somebody is working in that space, but it makes it a bit easier if you do have that access. But if you don't, there's platforms like LinkedIn, for example. Correct. So what I did was write up an email and I sent it to, I think I started with 20 people, because you will expect that some people will respond to you and some people won't, right?
That's right.
And in that email, I had a bunch of questions, well, not a bunch, but maybe it was like around 10 questions, and said, if you would be open to a call, that would be greatly appreciated. But maybe if you don't have the time and you have a few minutes to spare when you have time, could you please answer maybe these questions just to help me understand what a customer success manager does, because I'm interested in the field and I would love to see if it's something I can move into. And of course, there were people who responded and people who didn't, and some people who were open to having a call. So that's where I started my journey. And I got to understand what customer success managers do, which is essentially helping customers post-sales. So the role that I had at the time was pre-sales. And after pre-sales, really, I was not touching the customer as much. But a customer success manager comes in after the sale has been concluded. They will, yes, you come in afterwards, and then you will have, and also different organizations can run it a bit differently. And I've worked in a number of different organizations just and have seen that different nuances. But at the end of it, your aim as a customer success manager is coming in, understanding what the objectives the customer has. So what are the goals that they purchased the product that your company sold them? So you make sure that they are successful when they are using your product. So if they say, we purchased this product and we want to increase maybe customer experience, our customer experience with it, and they start listing maybe challenges that they had previously before they purchased. And this is also a conversation that when you're having with the customer, you're just validating something you've heard from your salespeople. So when you will work very closely with the sales organization still as a customer success manager, because they will understand how the customer got to purchase that situation. And if you're in a space where they might not know, maybe it was a different sales team that sold and the people have left and there's not that much documentation, because that can also happen. But that's when you will now start that conversation with the customer, and then you create a success plan with them. And that success plan is aimed at helping them move from, we're still new, we're still learning how to use your product, to we're successfully using it, we understand every feature we have, and we're actually seeing the outcomes and results that we were expecting. So you're working with different people from training, the training team, if there's courses maybe that they need to take, or you are working on making sure that they are phasing into the implementation and the use of the product in a way that actually has them see a very high adoption rate. But it's a very non-technical role. And I can also say, depending on the company that you're working in and the product that you are helping to support customers in, but it's a role you don't need to have technical knowledge to get into and be successful in. But
But you'd still recommend a degree in IT for somebody who would like to be in the customer success manager role. Is that so? Or are there certifications like project management, like the PMP or the Project Plus from CompTIA? Is there anything that you think, okay, look, if you don't really have an IT degree, you could complement your current qualification with this certification and try to build a career in that path?
You can definitely transition from a different role where you weren't working in IT, you weren't really exposed much to the IT world. And one of the things that is very important with that is upskilling yourself. So yes, PMP is very relevant in the customer success space, because customers are working on projects. When they're buying a new solution, there needs to be implementation, there needs to be training that takes place, whether it's even on the end user side, so people know, even if it's something like Zoom, for example, and an organization acquires it, they need to make sure people properly understand how to use every single feature on there, right? So looking at certifications that you can do, and from a customer success perspective, there's also customer success specific certifications that you can do. I did mine through Cisco, and it's a certification that is not Cisco specific. So if you look it up, it's a certification that is helping you understand the concepts of being a customer success manager and being able to work as a customer success manager broadly, because the training does not focus on any Cisco technology specifically. So you can look at different Cisco, not Cisco specifically, but just customer success manager certifications that you could look into. And that is something that helps you stand out as well. If you're going through the interview process, maybe you haven't worked in tech or even in the customer success space, but they can see that you actually have a genuine interest and you're working towards getting this thing. Because even for me, when I was transitioning from being an SE to a CSM, I got a bit of pushback from some people when I was interviewing, because they say, oh, but what if maybe you don't like this, you're used to your previous role where you're a bit more technical, and how do we know that you're not going to come this side, and then maybe 6 months down the line you're like, actually, I want to go back to doing what I used to do. And I would demonstrate that by showing them the amount of time that I had put in, which was speaking to the different people that I had spoken to properly understand what people in this role do. And that helped them show that I know what I'm getting myself into. And then I was also studying. I also started studying before I actually got into the role. And that was something I referenced, and had plans for further studies that I would like to take when I was already doing the role. So that is all something that can help you just demonstrate that I am very interested in this. I am putting in the work now before I actually get to that point. And it can help you stand apart from somebody else who's just like, well, I would like to try it out, but I don't really know. And they're not doing anything to position themselves as the best candidate if an employer wants to take a chance maybe on someone who's still new in the space.
Interesting. I'm just wondering now, because it's quite rare, I think, to really find these certifications or these courses being put out there. Was it that you were able to do that particular certification because you're already in Cisco? Is this something similar to maybe the Microsoft sales, the software sales certifications, or how would you describe it?
So no, you don't have to be a Cisco person to do this particular Cisco one.
Okay.
If you just search maybe Cisco Customer Success Manager certification, you will definitely be able to see it come up, and you can register for the training yourself. And there's been a number of people that I know who have gone through this training who have not worked for Cisco at all. So you don't have to be a person who is working for Cisco directly.
Great. I want us to transition into challenges that you think are unique to ladies. I have worked with ladies in NOCs, in IT departments, whereby you've got to access your server rooms where it's very cold, and sometimes they're always, choosing the path that seems to be a little bit more lighter. Not really to say they're not experienced or really not good at what they do, but there is always something, what can I say? It's really a soft part, a gentle part about ladies, whereby it's great to work with them. And sometimes even when you have to do physical work, like, no, don't leave that server, we'll take care of it. What challenges do you think are unique to ladies in the tech industry?
So I would say one of the biggest things is the fact that it is a very male-dominated industry. It's very male-dominated, and I cannot tell you the number of times I've had conversations with a customer, maybe first via email, and people automatically just assume that because they're talking to somebody who's supposed to be helping them with XYZ, that you're a guy. So the assumption is always there that you're male, and you are very likely going to find yourself in a lot of rooms where there might be 10, 15, even 20 people in that room, and you're literally the only female who is in there. And I'd say one of the biggest challenges is just getting taken seriously, like, as much as that might sound bad, but I feel like there is this perception about females and the type of roles that they should be taking up, or roles that they can properly do. And there are people who might look at you and automatically assume that you're an account manager. And I've had that also happen quite a lot when I worked in the more technical role, that people will just assume that you're there and you're the pure salesperson, relationship builder, and not that they are actually going to have a technical conversation with you. So one of the things I can advise and just hope that any female who is going into the field does is be confident in what you know. You know what you know, and anybody can potentially ask you a question that you might not maybe have the knowledge of, but just be confident when you are answering questions. And if you don't know something, don't try and act like, oh, maybe, I do know it, and you end up saying the wrong thing, but just be open and honest about it, because it happens with males as well. And you can always go and check something and come back to a customer and let them know after you've looked into it a bit more. But this is a conversation that we've had with a number of my female colleagues, especially when I was still in a technical role, where you will notice that a lot of females will sometimes be doubtful of what they know. So if there's a technical concept that you are presenting or something that you are delivering, you're going to feel like, I need to know every single thing about this topic. If there's 100 points that I need to touch on, I need to know every single one of those 100 points. And it's not always the case. It's not the case. But just be confident when you're going into it, and be aware of the fact that you will likely probably have to do a bit more just to prove that I am not just a female who's here for maybe the relationship building side of things, but I actually know what I'm talking about.
Is there a way in which you think men who work with other females in the IT space could improve the atmosphere of having ladies in the IT department?
I would say it's in the way that some things that some males will say. Like, I've had colleagues, people who were working in the same company as I was, say things like, oh, I understand you, you're a technical person and you know your stuff, but the way you're so pretty, I literally could bring you into a meeting and you just sit there, look pretty, and this particular customer would end up buying just because they're charmed by your looks. So looking at things like that, like, it's just not conversations or things to say that help move the needle forward when it comes to helping women feel like they are in a space where they belong and they can be looked at and taken seriously. Because as a colleague who is saying that to me, it's not something I look at and think this person literally takes me seriously when I'm in a room. As much as they can acknowledge that they have seen that I know my stuff, but if you're going to then go and talk about my looks and say, oh, but because you look like this, you could just come in and, be a pretty face and then that's it. Yeah, there's a bit of disrespect there. So I would say it's just be mindful of the way that you talk about certain things, and don't come in with biases. So just because you are seeing a female and they are even maybe dressed a certain way, because there were times where I would even have people say, well, the way you're dressed like an account manager, because I liked wearing heels. Like, I'm female and I enjoy dressing up. And it doesn't mean because I'm wearing heels, I now don't know what I'm talking about from a technical perspective. And so you'll find times where people will say, oh, but other female SEs, they just wear like t-shirts. You know how IT can be. It's very laid back. And I had a lot of days where I'll just wear a t-shirt, my jeans. I'm not really trying to do much. But I also did have days where I felt like I'm going to the office, so I'll wear a nice blouse, I'll wear my heels, but the comments were always like, oh, you're not dressed like an SE, as if you're supposed to look a certain way just to show that you have the aptitude or the technical knowledge to be able to deal with a particular situation or present a solution to a customer.
Wow. That's a mouthful. Very important for most of us in the IT department, especially men out there. It's so easy to just pass comments that are irrelevant sometimes. Busi, let's look at your achievements. What are some of the memorable achievements that you've had, whether in your personal space or maybe in the past roles that you've had in the past? What are some of the things that you remember to say, here, I nailed it, I crushed it? What are some of those moments?
Honestly, I think when I just look at everything that I've got, like the point that I am at in life, it would have to be moving to Canada. That would be it. I think that is one of the biggest milestones, and getting to a point where we became Canadian citizens, because I look at everything that I did prior to our move and even the work experience that I have. It's all things that made this particular moment and milestone a possibility for me. Wow. So when I look at the work environment, yes, I can, maybe cite, okay, I overachieved on my attainment for that year, whatever my quota was. But the culmination of all of that with my career and experience, I would say, is the move to Canada and eventually being able to become Canadian citizens. I think that has been.
I think if I've done my homework very well, you moved under the express entry.
That's right? Correct. Yes.
Okay, can you just briefly break down how that works, especially with people in tech? I have friends who go like, okay, I would like to be a tech nomad. I'm in Spain tomorrow. The following day, I'm here and there. And some of the limitations that we have, especially tech nomads from Africa, is that our passports are not very powerful. You cannot just move as you desire.
Yeah.
you may go to Botswana in Namibia and you're just back in South Africa and things like that. Maybe if you can just break down the importance of having qualifications that would just put you in this express entry part, and what it means now that you are a tech person who also happens to be a citizen in Canada, how the atmosphere in the tech industry is in North America.
Yeah, so with the Express Entry, it's a program that has a number of other programs inside, like if that makes sense. But you can move as a skilled tradesperson if you have a
Okay.
particular trade that you have, and you can move as in under the Canadian experience class if you're somebody who's already worked in Canada and you have experience working in Canada, or you can move under the one that I moved in, which is for skilled immigrants. So federal skilled worker program, which allows you to move to any province that you choose. And under the Express Entry, you can also find what they call the provincial nomination program. So when you apply to get into the pool, there might be a province that looks at the skills that you have and says, oh, okay, we'd like to nominate you to move to our province, which can help speed up your process a lot quicker. But when it comes to skills and being able to move to Canada as a skilled person or a person who works in the trades, there are a lot of skills that are in demand in Canada. And I think that's where there is a ripe opportunity for a lot of Africans to look into the different options and the different programs that exist and see what you could potentially be able to move under. And this goes from being somebody who is working in tech, maybe software developer, customer success manager, like I am. You could even be in the space of being a truck driver. Maybe you're a contractor. Like we bought a house around a year ago, and if I can tell you how difficult it was just to get contract people to come into the house, we had something, and I look at it as something that's pretty simple, because if I were in South Africa and I was looking for somebody to do this, it wouldn't have taken me as long as it did to get that to that point here in Canada. But we
Okay.
needed to remove carpet in the top floor. We didn't want carpet because one of my boys has allergies. But it was so difficult just to find people, and the timelines that they were giving, they would say, oh, we're only going to be available maybe after 3 months or after 4 months. So there are so many skills that are not just based on university degrees that people
That's
could
right.
move under. And after you make your move, it really opens up so many doors of opportunity for you.
It's great. That's really great. Well, I'd like to begin concluding. And I've got a couple of questions that's in that space. The kind of technology, that's the first question. The kind of technology that you're actually looking at. What are you constantly following? Is it AI? Is it virtual reality? What technology are you currently keeping an eye on?
Right now, it's AI for sure. It is
Hmm.
AI. Like I am finding it's making so many processes a lot easier. And as much as people will say, oh, but this could be taking a lot of people's jobs away, I
Yes.
look at it as an opportunity to innovate. Because if you have a machine that can help you do certain tasks and processes a lot quicker, this gives you more time to do what the machines probably can't do, which is be creative, be innovative, creating new things, and then having the machine go ahead and accelerate however that process of creation is. Because when I look at my processes as a content creator, for example,
Yes.
when it comes to video editing, there was a time where I had to sit through very long editing processes, but now I can incorporate AI into it and have that process be a lot quicker. So even if you are somebody who is working as an editor, for example, you can have AI make your processes faster, which means you're able to service a lot more of your clients, because not everyone is going to be looking into for using certain AI technologies to help
Correct.
with video editing, for example. So there will still be a human who will need to be part of this process until such a time where we say maybe, okay, yes, AI is so perfect, you just need to throw your video in there and it just does everything
That's the
for
one.
you. But when we get to that point, we will have built up to a point where you can see that, okay, there's skills that I maybe might need to get. How do I make myself just more skilled and be able to use this technology to my advantage? Because if you look at things like the internet, it did not exist for the longest of time, but it
You're
came
right.
around, and there were people who might have said, oh, this thing maybe is never going to work, or it's going to not make our lives a lot better. But we're able to have this conversation now. We're able to record this conversation and put it up on the internet for someone who wasn't able to join live to be able to see it. So there's so many opportunities and doors that I see being able to open because of AI. So I would say that's the biggest one that I'm currently just having a look at.
That's great. That's great. There's a question from Tenacious. I
I
think it's hitting on
see.
what we
Yeah.
discussed previously. He's saying, what
What
inspired
inspired
you
you, yeah, to move
to
to
move to
Canada?
Canada?
So one of the biggest things as a South African, I say like the safety in South Africa was a very, very big reason for us to end up moving. There's a lot of other things as well. And I mean, experiencing life in Amsterdam when I lived there, it's something that also just opened my eyes up to a different world and a different way of living. And it made me be interested in living elsewhere in the world. For me personally, living in Europe and like Amsterdam specifically, I love Amsterdam, love it to visit it. But the language barrier for me was just, it was not nice. And a lot of people do speak English in Amsterdam. So you're not gonna have trouble when you're maybe going to places to find people who can speak English. But things like your bank account, if you had online banking, my online banking was in Dutch. When I had to sign my contract, the contract was in Dutch. They gave me an English version of it, but they stated that if there would be any disputes in the contract, the Dutch version of it would prevail. But I'm literally signing something that I don't really know what's on there. I just have to take like whatever I get on Google Translate and the translation they gave me as truth, right? So Canada, I love the fact that I'm going to come here and they have both English and French as the official languages, but I won't have to go through the trouble and process of learning another language again, because English is not my mother tongue. You know, it's also a language I had to learn so I can be in the world and be able to, you know, speak and interact with a lot more people. So that was also another pull. But I would say safety was a big one because I do have kids. I have 2 kids. And one of the biggest things that started happening was people would get hijacked and some of them would have their kids taken with the car. And that just started being a fear. And I didn't want to live in that space where I'm constantly afraid of what could or what might happen, especially after experiencing living in Amsterdam, where I was living by myself. The apartment that I was in, there was no fence around it. My front door was literally like just glass. And it was a common thing when you're walking around to be able to see into people's places. Nobody was trying to like lock everything up. And it was just a different experience and a different way of life. And that really inspired the move to Canada.
Great. Talking about tech skills, we have now the world, especially after COVID, in the tech industry, a lot of people are looking at getting remote jobs either in North America or in Europe or everywhere else. And there's just a lot of, you know, this excitement and frenzy amongst IT people. Are there skills that you think tech specialists on the African continent must be able to harness before they become attractive in developed countries like Canada?
I would say at this particular point we're at, it would be a good time to look into the AI side of things. Just be that person who is going to be at the forefront and are able to bring new things into organizations. Because when you are competing with people who are coming from different backgrounds, you want to look for something that's going to help you stand out. And I think this is a space that you could look at certain things. And when you're even going through interview processes, they are usually trying to get to know you as well as a person. So it could be things where there's things that you're working out or trying out in your own personal time that are somewhat related to what is happening in the IT world right now. So I would say having a look at that and just being creative about how you can help yourself stand out can go a very long way. And I heard, I think it was this past week, there's a new program that the Canadian government is putting into effect that I think is going to be starting in July. But if you are somebody who maybe you work in tech and you want to come and work in Canada as a nomad, you can actually move to Canada and be able to work here for up to 6 months without having to leave. You can work up to 6 months. And if you happen to find a job while you are working this side for a foreign company, you would be able to then take up that job and then be able to apply to be able to stay a lot longer. So there's so many opportunities and so many things that you could potentially do just to open the door for yourself. But I think we're in a space where just thinking outside the box a little bit, like think outside the box and look at these emerging technologies that are really going to change the way that we live, that we work, that we do so many things in life.
Great. Also, Spain, I think, is having that tech nomad visa, which is 6 months, and you can always transition. Busi, to be honest, you've worked with all the brands, Cisco, CDW, Salesforce. I'm just impressed. And I'm wondering who's been behind you. I think this is also my last question. Who has really been this force of inspiration? Are there people that you always looked up to? You've spoken about your brother, but are there any other influencers who have shaped your career?
Thank you so much. I think when I just look at it, I will say it's my friends and family, like the people that I keep around me. I feel they are constantly striving for more things. They are constantly doing great things in life. And that inspires me to look at what could I be doing like next? And it also just inspires me to go for the things that I want to pursue. So if I am working for a particular company, for example, and I see another one, or maybe, and a lot of the companies that I've ended up working for, they've reached out to me because I have cultivated an online presence for myself that really speaks for itself. And one of the biggest things I can say is staying curious. So staying curious and keeping a group of people around me that are also just striving and doing really amazing things in their own lives, that I think has been the biggest inspiration for me. Because when you see other people going for things that they want to do and they are doing them, and you know, when you have a conversation with a close friend, maybe your family member, and somebody tells you that, oh, you know, I would like to maybe do XYZ, I'd like to go and live in this place at some point. Yes. They might not have a plan or know, how am I actually going to get this thing done? But when you get to see them actually doing the thing and putting it in motion, it inspires me personally to say, okay, I can also do a lot of things like that I would like to do. And I might not know how I'm actually going to get those things done. But if I just start, just take the first step and try something out. If something doesn't work out, I've learned something from it. I can pivot from that thing. I can try something else. But that is one thing I just have not been afraid of. Just change, trying new things. If something doesn't work, it's okay. It's okay. I can do something else. But my biggest inspiration has been the people that I live my day-to-day life with.
Wow, that's great. That's great. Any other closing remarks that you may have, and how people can easily reach out to you?
So I think my closing remarks will be for anyone who is listening to this to just stay curious, explore the things that you have an interest in. Don't be afraid of failure. And I say one of the things that I learned in a book that I was reading previously, it's called The Code of the Extraordinary Mind by Vishen. So you can have a look at it if you'd be interested in getting it. But he went through an explanation of life and how we normally expect life to go, which we look at it and think, well, life is supposed to go in a linear fashion. You know, you grow up, you go to school, you get a job. Maybe if you want to have a family, you get married, you have kids, you live this nice life, and things just keep going like this. But the reality of life is it's going to be going upwards, but the upwards is going to have downs and ups and downs and ups. So there's times where there are going to be challenging things that come along in your path, but just be prepared and know that it's not always going to be up and happy and things are going well all the time. And that is how life generally looks. If you look at your past, the past trajectory of your life, I don't think there is one person who can say, oh, I've never had anything wrong or bad happen in my life. Everything has just been good up till this point. And that can give you a different perspective when you're looking at some of the goals that you might have, that you look at and you think, how am I even going to make this happen? Or some of the dreams or things you would like to experience in life. So my last parting words would be, just go for those things. Be curious, try things out. If they don't work out, they didn't work out, but at least you know that you tried it, it didn't work, and now you can move on to the next thing. And if you would love to connect with me, I am on probably all social media platforms, and my handle is @Busi_global. So yeah, the global is GLOBAL, and my name BUSI. So Busi_global or Busi.global.
Great. Thank you so much, Busi. We really appreciate you taking the time and just coming to break down all these nitty-gritties and important aspects of life that both young people and professionals can also grasp from and be able to just progress professionally. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.